They were expecting a baseline. Just a system check. Outlap, tire temp, routine. But what they got was something else. A single-timed lap. No full deployment. No soft compound. And yet, the numbers were wrong. Not slower than expected. Faster. And not by a small margin. Adrian Newey, watching from the pit wall, arms folded, said nothing at first. But the data was already coming in. Sector 2. -0.3. Final corner. Flat throttle. Telemetry was spitting out figures that didn't match the simulation. The AMR26, running heavy, cold, under low power, was clocking times that belonged to Q3 conditions. When the car returned to the garage, Alonso didn't speak. But the look said enough. Then, in a quiet exchange, Newey gave his verdict. Half a second. That's how much faster the car was than expected. And that figure didn't come from PR. It came from data. That's when the tone in the paddock shifted. Because if this was just a systems run, and it's already producing those numbers, then Aston Martin hasn't just arrived early. They've arrived quietly, with something that might already be unstoppable. Officially, this was just a private session. No live timing. No official coverage. Only raw data for internal use. The teams agreed in advance, limited mileage, limited media, limited expectations. Every car ran different setups. Different fuel loads. Different run plans. None of the usual performance programs. It was a controlled environment, and that's exactly how the FIA wanted it. Keep the optics quiet. Keep the pressure low. Because 2026 isn't just a technical reset. It's a political one. The new regulations are aggressive. Heavier cars, tighter aero windows, complex powertrain integration. And every team knows, early mistakes now will carry all the way through to next season. That's why the tone across the paddock was calm. Careful. Muted. Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, even Ferrari, they all ran clean, silent programs. No showboating. No lap time leaks. But Aston Martin's data was different. They didn't run long. They didn't run flashy. But something about their car, the way it moved through mid-speed corners, the way it responded to load, didn't match what engineers expected from a first run. And then came the number. Not in a press release. Not in an interview. But in a quiet exchange behind closed doors. Half a second. That's how much faster the AMR26 ran than the simulation had projected. No one's admitting it publicly. But from that moment on, everything changed. At first, it just looked clean. The AMR26 didn't understeer. It didn't snap. It didn't pitch under braking. Even on cold tires. It rotated like a car that had already done hundreds of laps. Stable entry. Predictable mid-corner. Minimal correction on exit. Which, for a first rollout, isn't normal. The moment that started raising eyebrows was turn 9. Fast, uphill, partial throttle, the kind of corner that reveals chassis flaws instantly. But the AMR26 stayed flat. No mid-corner lift. No micro-corrections. Alonso carried the car through with what looked like full trust. That's not supposed to happen yet. And when the engineers back in the garages started matching that behavior to the internal GPS overlays, things got uncomfortable. Because that wasn't just a good lap. It was a lap that shouldn't be possible under current setup restrictions. Two senior figures, one at Ferrari, one at McLaren, have since reviewed the frame-by-frame footage. Unofficially. And both came away saying the same thing. There's something in the floor we haven't understood. Not illegal. Not necessarily. But subtle. And possibly strategic. Because if Aston Martin's baseline run was already that composed, with heavy fuel and conservative maps, then the real story isn't what the car just did. It's what it's still hiding. By the end of the session, it wasn't just Aston Martin's time that people were talking about. It was what that time represented. Because under the 2026 regulations, performance isn't supposed to appear this early. Especially not like this. The rules are designed to flatten the field in the early phase. To make lap time a function of adaptation, not invention. But the AMR26 looked settled. Effortless. Like a car 2 months ahead of schedule. That's when the conversation started changing. No longer about setup. Now about compliance. Not whether the car was legal. But whether the car was too legal. Because there's a quiet loophole inside the 2026 framework. A space between mechanical load response and aerodynamic surface behavior. Not banned. Not allowed. Just untested. And if Aston Martin has found a way to exploit that seam, then they haven't just built a fast car. They've built a legal advantage no one else saw coming. That's where the FIA enters. Not with penalties. Not with accusations. With uncertainty. Because, according to internal whispers, the FIA's own modeling doesn't know how to classify what they saw. The downforce curve matched expectations. The drag numbers looked normal. But the way the car achieved that balance, especially under variable throttle, doesn't match any of the predictive models currently in use. It's not an active system. It's not programmable. It's not electronic. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because if it can't be measured, how do you regulate it? No team has filed a protest. No technical directive has been issued. No journalist has been granted access to the full lap data. And yet, no one has dismissed it either. The engineers are talking. The analysts are watching. And Alonso? Alonso has been unusually quiet. For a driver who normally thrives on tension. Who loves to play the political game through thinly veiled comments. This time, he's saying nothing. When asked about the AMR26's early pace, he offered only 2 words. Too early. But inside the garage, sources say something very different is happening. There's a level of calm that feels planned. Like a team that's already done this in private. And is now simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. Even Stroll, who caused the red flag that ended the session, didn't sound frustrated. His tone in the debrief? Neutral. Almost bored. That's not the reaction of a team with problems. That's the reaction of a team hiding something. And maybe the most telling silence is coming from the FIA itself. Normally, when something new appears, especially something that unsettles the field, you'll see a technical clarification within 48 hours. This time? Nothing. No comment. No reminder of ride height tolerances. No quiet note about flexing structures. Just silence. And in Formula 1, silence isn't passive. It's protective. Especially when the thing no one is explaining might be the one thing that changes everything. At Red Bull, the simulations are being updated. Not to copy Aston Martin, but to defend against them. They've already adjusted their 2026 baselines. Because when Newey says half a second, he's not guessing. He's benchmarking. At Mercedes, the tone has shifted. Engineers who were focused on weight distribution are now asking about airflow compensation. Not to build something identical, but to find out how far off they might already be. Ferrari, too, has gone quiet. Not in defeat, in observation. Their own car wasn't slow. It performed as expected. But that's the problem. Expected might not be enough anymore. If Aston Martin is operating in a different aerodynamic window, one where mechanical flex and airflow manipulation are synchronized through structure, not electronics, then that's not just innovation. That's a foundation. And foundations are harder to copy than upgrades. Because what they've potentially unlocked isn't something you bolt on in Barcelona. It's something you build the rest of the car around. That's why other teams are already re-evaluating. Suspension layouts, floor architecture, cooling systems, even the sequence in which data is interpreted in real time. This isn't about catching Aston Martin this season. It's about surviving them in 2026. Because if they're already ahead by 5/10, without pushing, without revealing everything, then when the racing starts, it won't be about who's fastest. It'll be about who's least far behind. The AMR26 didn't set the fastest time of the day. It didn't run long stints. It didn't complete full programs. And yet, it left the strongest impression. Not because of what it did, but because of what it suggested. A half-second advantage, confirmed, not theorized, is rare. But a half-second advantage without explanation? That's different. That's the kind of gap that breaks timelines. The kind that forces teams to change development paths mid-season. Not because they want to, but because they have to. Now, the entire paddock is watching. Waiting. Not for a headline. For the next clue. What will Alonso say next time? Will the FIA step in? Or will this play out like 2009? When one quiet design revolution rewrote the season before it even began? Because right now, Aston Martin isn't confirming anything. And they don't need to. They've already delivered their message. Not through media. Through data. And that message is clear. If this is their baseline, then race pace is something the rest of the grid might never see coming. And this? This might only be the first move.